believe it or not, I swear this is true. It is time for my favorite section of the show. Here we are with Fun with Fountain Pens. Let me bring up that bit.
Here's a house. Here's a door. Windows 1, 2, 3, 4. Ready to knock? Turn the lock.
10 school. I just love that intro. You know, I've thought from time to time maybe I should change it, but no, I just love that one. I think it really does encapsulate me and my show. All right, guys, you'll know that I go on all of the time about line variation, because the huge thing with fountain pens, right, is line variation, because it gives people's handwriting character. And there's a whole bunch of different ways of doing it. Now, one of the reasons that people like writing with a fountain pen is a fountain pen is a very, very beautiful instrument to use, but it's also a very easy instrument to use because it requires no pressure. You can write for a very, very long time with a fountain pen and not cramp your hand, because you're not needing to press down on the page for the ink to flow. The ink just naturally flows. And so for that reason, it's a very, very comfortable experience, and you don't need to apply pressure like you do with a ballpoint. Okay, now there is an exception to that. There are some fountain pens that you do need to apply pressure with, and this used to be the thing back in the sort of like 1910s, 20s, 30s, 40s, where your grandparents or maybe great grandparents were taught to actually apply pressure, downward pressure, with their fountain pen to create line variation, to make their handwriting more attractive. And the pens were actually made to do that. They're called a flex nib, a pen where you put, your grandmother was taught, put pressure on the downstrokes and don't apply pressure on the cross strokes, so you get the ink flow on the downstrokes and no pressure, and narrow lines horizontally, and the pens were designed to do that. They went out of fashion because people preferred to just have a nice smooth writing experience that didn't tire the hand. Now, what had happened was about 15, 20 years ago, those pens started becoming very, very fashionable, and the old ones, those antique pens, became collector's items, and people would pay a lot of money for them. And noticing this, manufacturers started remaking flex fountain pen nibs, and one of them is that dude Nathan Tardif, who owns Noodler's Inc. in the United States. He's this crazy libertarian guy. I love him to pieces, but he's full on libertarian, man, like full on libertarian, who makes these wonderful, wonderful inks that I love, but also a fantastic range of pens. And he's done a whole bunch of them. Some of them I've talked about before. One of his pens that I really like is a flex nib called the Noodler's Ahab. It's based upon the book Moby Dick. He has another one which is an improvement on it called a Neponset, and then he came out from that with this pen here, which is the Triple Tail. Now, there's another type. There's flex nibs, and then there are flex nibs. And one type of flex nib that is particularly unusual is a music nib. Now, most music nibs, rather than having 2 tines, right, on the nib, actually have 3 tines. So when a nib is laying down ink, the tines separate to increase the ink flow. On a music nib, there are 3, so it really, really spreads, okay, and it lays down even more ink. And I'm going to give you a demonstration of that now. Okay, now the thing is with it, what you're always trying to do with this sort of writing is to not overstress the nib. If you push too hard, the harder you press, the broader the line is, but you run the risk of railroading, which is a situation where the ink flow can't keep up with the amount that is required on the page. And if you look at the nib as I do the next bit, watch the 3 times separate to lay down the ink. Can you see that? All right, so that is the effect. The other thing about this pen, if I hold it up, you might actually be able to see, if I do it right, you might be able to see the 3 tines on this nib. Now I have it as a demonstrator, which is great. I love having, because it's quite a nice instrument to use, and a demonstrator just means that you can see inside the barrel, that it's transparent, and you can actually see the mechanics of the pen, which makes it very, very attractive. Although with the acrylics that Nathan uses, some people really don't like the smell. It's got particularly when they're new, they smell a little bit like gasoline almost, and it drives some people crazy. I don't think it's a problem, but it is something that people notice. This pen is great as an everyday writer. It writes at about a medium, maybe almost a broad when you're applying no pressure. But when you want to, you can lay down a whole bunch of ink, and you see that there's a little bit of railroading there where there's a split in the colors that was laid down in the ink, and that's because the ink flow wasn't keeping up. All right. Now, the ink I'm using today comes to us from Jacques Herbin. I have talked about these inks before. Jacques Herbin it's the oldest ink manufacturer in the world. They're still operating in Paris, in the second arrondissement, where Jacques Herbin founded it, I think, about 490 years ago. Okay, this is one of their 1798 collection inks, which means that it is a shimmering ink. Now, the aspects of inks that people like, shading, shimmering, those sorts of aspects of ink are attractive to fountain pen users for one reason or another. And if you see this ink here, you can see that there's a color change from the sort of deep orange to a sort of a more reddy orange, almost brown in the ink. Okay, but the other thing this ink has is shimmer, which is just really a polite way of saying that it's got glitter in it. Okay, so you may not be able to tell, but you will be, because it takes a little while. But on some of these early examples that I gave you, like, not only is the color changing, but you will also see that there is some silver inside it, which is the silver glitter which has been added to the ink which is loaded into this pen. Now, I have to give you a warning. Shimmering inks are dangerous, right? Because those little particles can clog up the mechanisms of a good pen. You have to be very, very careful with inks that do that. You don't want to be leaving an ink like that in a pen for a long time and it dries out. That would be that could kill a pen, all right? So you've got to be careful with it. But it is absolutely perfect for things like sending lovely greeting cards in combination with a pen like this that creates a great deal of line variation. All right, I think this is starting to go a little bit silver, so I might just kind of hold up the page and hope that you can see that shimmer effect. Okay, you can see in the sort of the dark brown that it's starting to come through, that sort of shimmer effect. I have another one of the inks in this range. Oh, and if you look at the bottom of the bottle, you can see the glitter at the bottom of it. Now, what the other ink that I have like this is the Emerald de Shiva, which is a green that's got, rather than having a silver shimmer, it's got a gold. It's a green and gold, and it's supposed to look like emeralds, and it very, very much does. I use this ink very, very sparingly. A bottle of this would last me, 2 or 3 lifetimes, because I only use it when I'm doing things like sending Christmas cards or greeting cards with a pen like this, because it makes it really, really attractive. If you spend time and do the characters well with that line variation, it's a very, very easy method of making something which is very, very visually striking. You could use a pen like this as an everyday writer, but really, for me, I use it for what it is best at, which is really just doing greeting cards. All right, so that is this week's pen and ink. We have the Cornaline d'Egypte. Oh, I've got to say also, this color is it's inspired, right? That's the term for it. It's inspired by the Cornaline. What is it in English? It's a semi-precious stone that was used in ancient Egyptian jewelry. There's a name for it in English. Carnelian, which are ancient Egyptians, ancient Greeks, ancient Macedonians used for jewelry. This is the color of it that Jacques Herbin developed. So that is the Cornaline of Egypt ink had with the Noodler's Triple Tail 3-tined fountain pen. Guys, that was fun with fountain pens. I hope you found that entertaining. I'm going to play you a little bit more music and answer some of your questions about pens and inks.